Welcome back, weirdos. Jeremy Grinsteiner, your host of the Weird and Strong podcast, back for another episode with Justine Arsenault. She is such a fantastic and amazing guest. We had such a great conversation, and we got to focus mostly on what makes her her and her superpower of being able to show up authentically and unapologetically as herself. This was so fun to record, and I'm excited for you to listen to it. So, without further ado, let's get weird. Welcoming Justine Arsenault to the Weird and Strong podcast. How are you doing, Justine?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's fantastic to see you again. I feel like we were just seeing each other in person not that long ago, even though we live fairly close together in comparison to many other people in our community.
Yes, it was amazing. And it's hard to believe how long it's actually been since we've seen each other, because it feels like yesterday. But it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. I know that's been following up with some of the people who have gone to the Enlifted event. What was your energy like? What was your energy level like returning from the event?
It was an interesting energy mix. I experienced the longest, hardest sleep hangover of my life.
Okay.
So I am someone who values my sleep. So I was exhausted and energized. I say like it felt cellular. Like on the inside, right? Like you're vibrating, you have all this excitement and energy. Like I was physically tired, but my brain was firing on, like I was rejuvenated, I guess is the right word for it. It was to connect with a group of people who get it, to have open conversations right away with people you barely even know. It's amazing.
That's really cool. I echo that sentiment. I drove all the way from Virginia back to Fargo, and I was back by that Tuesday morning.
Yeah, you're crazy.
And it wasn't out of I need to be there. Really, it was. I started driving. And I'm like, let's just keep going. I'm having a great time being on the road. There were stretches where I had it was just me in silence driving, and then I look up and I'm like, oh, it's 5 hours have gone by. What the hell?
How did I get here?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Anyways, I've got a weird question for you, Justine. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. I want you to imagine that you have lost your ability to speak.
Okay.
Except for one word. You only can say one word going forward. What one word are you going to say?
Love.
Love?
Love.
Any particular reason why?
It is the word that resonates with me the most.
Okay.
So when people ask me who Justine is, it's the three things that I don't say. I'm a coach, I'm a mom, I'm a military wife. I say I am fire, I am love, and I am passion.
That's really rad. All right, podcast is over. We're done. Just mic drop on that one. No, that's super cool.
Well, it was actually Austin Linney. We were having a conversation about who are you? And most people will reel off a bunch of stuff that they're a part of, right? But what are you when you strip all of that away at your core? Right? So part of your identity. And when you tie your identity to the things that you have and the things that you do, as opposed to the things that live within inside you that you bring to all of the things outside of you, what are they? Like for me, I bring passion, fire, and love to everything that I do.
Yeah, that's a fantastic perspective. In looking at, I was having a conversation with somebody today and looking back at my own past experiences in life of the ending of a job that you were really attached to, or a role that you were really attached to, and how that can send some people into a major spiral of depression, or really having not having the tools to grieve that loss because they believe that they were this label that they put on themselves that isn't actually them.
Exactly. That's it's funny. My son, they're doing an interview at his school today. And we have the Winnipeg Jets here, which is NHL hockey team. But then we also have their farm team here, which is the Manitoba Moose. Okay. So there was a studio coming in today to ask questions about mental health. So the kids were going to ask questions. They were going to be recorded. And then certain Manitoba Moose players were going to answer those questions back. So they'd be recorded to answer the questions. My son got a really silly question. It was, do you think that playing hockey improves your physical health and your mental health? I'm like, that's a no-brainer. So I came up with a better one. And I wrote it out and I said, can he ask this question instead? And it's, have you ever wondered who you would be if you didn't have hockey?
Ooh.
Right. So
there's a TV producer somewhere going, who is this kid? And how did he like, this is a little too deep, or maybe it's, who knows?
Yeah. Well, and I have I'm actually curious because that's like, I work with young athletes, right? And that was a big thing we saw during COVID was you stripped their sport away from them. And so many slipped into anxiety and depression because nobody knows who they are. Well, not nobody, but very few young people realize that they're more than hockey. They're more than volleyball. They're more than basketball, right? So it's, you take that part away and they truly believe that they have nothing left to do in the world. Right. Yeah. So building that identity outside of the sport is super important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a cool thing because how old is your son?
9
years old. And he's going to be asking that question to semi-pro and professional athletes.
Yeah. It's gonna be great. I really hope they let him ask it.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be really, I would want to see that. So
yeah. And well, it's one of those questions that people, it is like, we were talking about this when we were at the Unlifted thing. It was different questions that really get you to think, questions that people don't ask often enough. They ask that surface level, but when you like that one little dig, you're like, huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's the question of, would you rather be an active participant in your life, or would you rather be on autopilot?
Active participant all the way.
Yeah. And for myself, I've ebbed and flowed in between those. And I'm sure because many people, if you don't know that you can be an active participant in your life, you're stuck in that NPC world. You're stuck as that non-playable character, the bystander. Everything's happening to you instead of making things happen.
Yeah. What is it? Free Guy? Like that, very much like that movie. I was just hanging out.
I was just listening to another podcast, and they referenced this of this being a symptom or something that we can see in our popular culture is people acting like they're NPCs or becoming NPCs in their own life, and it's like that's such a crazy idea. And I know I've been there.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like especially after having kids and like moving a couple times as a military family, like you'll go on autopilot and then you'll stop and you'll be like, what? Am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking because they might slip out. It's like, but you stop and you're like, where the fuck am I? And who am I? Right? Like, how did I get here?
Again, how did we get here? We're dry.
Like, what just happened? Where are we? But yeah, it's the autopilot is and easy to slip into. I had this, I call it walking thoughts. So like WOTS. And because I do my best thinking when I walk. And I was thinking the other day of why is it so much easier to create bad habits or habits that don't align with who we are or who we want to be and they don't serve us than it is to create habits that do align with who we want to be and do serve a purpose in our life. Right? Like, why is it so easy to slip into that than it is to climb out of it. Right?
I have some ideas and some thoughts.
I have some theories and I want to hear yours.
So there's a couple options here. First of all, the thing that I noticed, and this is purely based off of my own observation of myself, particularly as well. Comfort is the number one in that, because what we say is bad habits or less than optimal or just habits period that prevent you from getting to the places where you told yourself you want to be. If where you are is really comfortable, if it's really comfortable to eat the fast food, it's really comfortable to get the convenience food, it's really comfortable to lay on the couch and watch TV and do all of those things, if that is really your comfort zone, it requires getting out of that comfort zone to change those habits. When we look at also, there's a component of this of physical memory as well, in that, we talk about things like muscle memory, and much of that comes into like habitual movements. When we take things out of the higher thinking centers of things that we cognitively have to contemplate and concentrate on. And the things that, again, if you start driving and you end up at your place of work, you go, how did I get here? Is because there was a muscle memory. You were paying attention mostly, but you weren't cognitively actively participating in the act. And so when we have these behaviors that we want to change, many times we have to make a physical shift as well. So if you always go to the fridge and grab a snack and it's not healthy, something to change that physically is to not have that snack physically available in front of you. So it's a physical change that can change the habit. And so comfort level, and just also having those habits ingrained in our physicality. Those are two areas that I believe are important in this. And there's also, just like you were talking about previously, the third area that I'm adding onto this isn't an identity component. If you there are parts of us that are bought into our own failure. There's an identity to all of us that are secretly in love with failing. And when we are in love with, and when we don't have the tools to identify that for ourselves, and that we lack the ability to fully see what success looks like, we're going to find a way to create failure for ourselves as well.
I agree with that. 100%.
Yeah.
I like all of those. My thoughts were like the comfort zone as well. And so I use it a lot because my area is emotional eating, disordered eating. So like when I work with young athletes, the identity part of it, trying to prevent emotional eating, disordered eating. I find a lot of bad habits are that comfort zone, right? But we're trying to move away from pain and towards pleasure. And there are many foods, many habits, many things that we can do, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's gambling, right? Online shopping, food, scrolling through social media, they all create that little pleasure inside of your brain. And you're moving yourself towards that and away from pain. So we're hiding from something, right? So we stay within that comfort zone. One of the things that I've done a video on it a couple of times because to me, it's a little bit of a mind fuck when you think about it, right? So, and I was talking to my husband about it the other day. So we're currently comfortable where we're at. We are absolutely miserable and we don't want to be here. We want to be over there, but this is the comfort zone, right? This is what we've known for too long, right? And in order for us to get over there and be truly comfortable, we have to step into a whole unknown pile of discomfort, right? So then the question is, do you remain uncomfortable in your comfort, or do you step into discomfort to move into true comfort?
What's the equation? Is that something to the effect of the pain of change needs to be less than the pain of staying the same?
Mm-hmm.
For many people to consider even making a change, especially.
Yeah. And I find a lot of people, though, especially with what we do, right? When you think about the way that we walk people through their stories, it's an illusion that they have. It's something they've talked themselves into, that it's going to be so much more painful than it actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like hyping yourself up to pull that super huge sliver out. You're like, God, it's going to hurt so bad. But it's like, it's going to hurt and not as bad as you think. And it's going to feel so much better, so much quicker than you think it's going to as well. So, but like the mind's amazing thing. You can talk yourself into or out of whatever you really want to.
Yeah. It's that's very much part of the equation, or is, to a large extent, the equation when we're talking about the nuts and bolts behind change, or the nuts and bolts behind altering this reality that we experience on a day-to-day basis. And I had a thought there and I just thought, so one of the things, just like you were talking about, this thing feels so much bigger again, big tool of writing things down. The other component of this that I notice, and perhaps you notice this with clients, I notice it sometimes with myself, is the runaway questions internally. The unanswerable questions, or the questions that we don't answer.
Mm-hmm. Those ones.
Yeah. The ones that run, they're like, well, what if, all of those things. And I heard the most amazing quote, and it came up in the most unlikely of places. Came up as I was watching the much critically, what's the word I'm looking for? Disliked adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's universe from Amazon, The Rings of Power.
Okay.
So it's completely unexpected to hear anything of like philosophical value in this. Mm-hmm. As much as I love J.R.R. Tolkien's work, it's fan fiction.
Yeah.
And the quote goes to something that to the effect of, what cannot be answered hollows out the mind. I was like, ooh. So I've got this question and I can't answer it. Unanswerable questions hollow out the mind. And so it's just continually hollowing out space in my head until it's so big and it takes up all of that space that I have in here with just that one question. Like, all right. So how do we make it take up less space?
Yeah. And I think, well, and that's accurate. I do think we're asking the same question over and over again because we're avoiding other questions that are involved in that one thing. You're like, I can't answer this, but I'm going to focus on it. It's like the victim mentality. You're just going to stay stuck in it because you can. It's like, well, what are other questions that you can ask as opposed to that one that are similar that you can answer, right? But no, I want to answer this question. It's like, well, you can't.
What am I afraid of in the answer of this question that's preventing me from answering it? Why won't I answer this question? Does it truly have no answer?
Yeah. Or are you asking it in the right way?
Yeah.
Avoiding it?
Yes.
Manipulating it so that it's, that one little shift with that word, it's all it takes is one word.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like a slap in the face.
You create awareness around it. It's the person who has let's say distracted or disconnected habits. Somebody who goes for convenience foods, fast foods, watches a lot of TV, and they get to be in their middle age and they go, well, I have no idea why I'm overweight and I have all these sicknesses and I don't really feel fulfilled in my life. I don't know how this happened.
Mm-hmm. Autopilot.
Oh, yeah.
Not paying attention. Right?
Exactly. You alluded a little bit to outside of these characteristics that you talked about that are you. You talked about some of the roles that you fulfill. Let's talk about What is the way that you show up unconventionally in the world, or what's the most unconventional thing about Justine?
Unconventional.
What makes you weird?
So many things. I am of the mindset that every single person on this planet is weird. It's, are you my type of weird?
Yeah.
Right? Because some people are, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And I also know that I am not everybody's cup of tea, and I am 100% okay with that.
Not everybody's cup of weird.
Yeah. I am me. And there's so many people I know say that they're like, I'm unapologetically me. And I'm authentically me. And I spent a good portion of my life watering down who I am.
Okay.
And I thrive and love being my absolute authentic self around people. And I know I'm awesome. I'm well aware of that. Right. Maybe not to everybody, but I know I'm awesome. And I find when you're able to be yourself authentically and say things that people are like, does she just say that? Like, what? Like, you're just the unfiltered, not in a bad way, just this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm doing. Right. It allows other people to be a little freer with the way that they are. So it's like, I love the reactions that I get from other people. But for me, it's being me. Like, I'm weird. I don't even know that I could explain my weirdness. It's an experience you have to have. You have to experience the weirdness.
Yeah.
I love fantasy stuff. So like you were talking about the Amazon, I actually liked it, but I never read the books.
I loved it. Yeah. And
as
somebody who has consumed a lot of Tolkien content, I'm told I'm not supposed to like it. I don't care.
Yeah. But that's like saying that I hated the Harry Potter movies because I've read the books, all of them, like 8 times, and I love Harry Potter. And the movies are a disaster compared to the books, but the movies are really good. Right? It's like and I love being silly. I don't know. I'm weird. It's just that it's an experience. You have to experience it. I can't explain.
Yeah. Do you think that there is something to be said about living in cold climates and that ability to stand in your weirdness?
Yes, because it's warm. It warms you. If I was boring and cold, I would be more cold than the climate. Yeah. And it's freaking cold here.
Yeah. I know. Yes. And also we have how many months where we're mostly indoors?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
Last winter wasn't bad though. It wasn't too bad. I didn't spend as many. Like the kids didn't have to stay inside as many times as I thought they were going to. So here's hoping that it's again this way. But it warms me when I see people being weird. Like when I dropped my daughter's in middle school this year. So when I see like friends being weird, like, and loud and authentic about it, as opposed to, oh, I'm worried about what other people are going to think of me. I'm like, keep that right there. And it warms you up. Like when you can tell when somebody's being their authentic, ridiculous self. And it's a beautiful, warm thing to watch.
I say this many times to folks is that we humans have pretty good bullshit meters. Can we get fooled? Yeah, absolutely. But as far as when we're talking about authentic connection and people showing up as themselves, we know that. It's like in looking at media, when somebody's a bad actor, it's because they're trying too hard many times. Like they're putting on too much of an act, and they're not allowing that authenticity to come through, even though they're not being themselves. Yeah. There's still a hint of that comes through, which makes it really cool. And we can sniff that out pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so for you, was this something that you was, to be authentically yourself? Was it always that way? Or is it something that you had to learn how to be?
it was a relearn. I like, for the most part, not all, because it depends on your upbringing, but most kids are authentically weird. Like they are authentically themselves. And it's us as adults that beat it out of them, right? Like, don't act that way. That's inappropriate. Don't do that. That's weird. It's like, we're the ones who beat that spirit out of them. And I love watching my kids do weird shit and ask crazy questions when other people are around that most people would just be like mortified. And I am dying because I know it's making people uncomfortable. And I think it's hilarious. And like, I refuse to be that parent. Like, there's a place where you can be disrespectful, but being weird and authentically yourself is like something that I want my kids to experience. And not that my parents ever, let's say, beat it out of me, but I would say society did, right? Like it was, I was still pretty loud and weird, but watered down, like I watered it down. And then I'd say when I met my husband, I would have gone through like a patch of like still myself, but a little watered down around other people. Like there's why do you swear so much? Like, why do you act like that? Like, why are you doing that? And, it's like, well, why can't I? Right. Like, yeah. So it's then when you do the work on yourself, you realize that it really doesn't matter, that people who are in your life that matter are going to accept you for who you are and are going to be okay with the way that you act for the most part. And if they've proven to be a valuable member of your life, then if they do call you out on some shit, you're going to be like, crap, like I should evaluate this. But if it's just some bystander calling you out, it's like, you have no value in my life, so your opinion doesn't matter. Right. And I would say it was something that I would have known naturally and then slowly relearned as I became an adult.
Got it. And when you say watered down, did that take a particular form, or was that just he's always diminishing?
Not as loud. I'm a very loud person, not like obnoxiously loud, but I have a very naturally loud voice. Like I coach my son's hockey team. I don't need a microphone. When I give a presentation, I don't need a microphone. I can project my voice very loudly. If I had been on that stage, I wouldn't have needed a microphone. I can be that loud. So the passion that I have for things, a lot of people find it weird how passionate I am about the things that I'm passionate about. They're like, why are you so intense? Or
why do you think that is, that people are taken aback by that level of passion?
Because they forget that they can also be that passionate about something. And like it's like the equivalent of watching a child or a dog get super excited about the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. And it's so small. And you're just like, if I could be that excited about something, it's like, fun story. You can. Yeah.
What is it that would make you that excited?
Right.
Yeah. There's a concept. Sorry, we're derailing all over the place. First of all, with the being loud, were you by chance a theater kid?
No.
Okay.
No. My mom is a childcare provider and she's very loud. And I grew up in childcare and then I worked in childcare and then like I just have this naturally loud voice. And like theater would never have been my thing because I was terrified to speak in front of people. When I was like, I remember getting up in front of my class when I was middle school. And I mean, I'm as white as they get. I'm almost clear, right? But like red and splotchy and just like shaking, holding a presentation. And now like I love talking in front of people. But yeah, it's that watered down is, I think the question that I choose to be offended by it. I'm not really offended. I think it's interesting. I've been asked it. Why don't you tell us how you really feel? Like when you get all like fired up about something and it's like, I did. I just did that. and it made you uncomfortable. So then you ask the stupid question. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
It's an interesting one because does the question imply that you were hiding how you really feel?
yeah.
Like
Well, no, it was
they're projecting how you should feel in part of that question.
yeah. Well, it's typically said in a sarcastic tone. It's like you get all fired up about
I
something
see.
and they're like, "Whoa, why don't you tell us how you really feel?" And it's like, "I did."
Mm,
And that's okay.
yeah. Yeah. And I lost my other question. We're bouncing all over the place. My ADHD brain is loving the flow, and it's likely
It'll come
that
back
things
around.
will it'll come back. It'll come back at some point. Um, and so when you're looking at this like this authenticity and this being yourself and truly being okay in your weirdness, how does that come through for you as a coach?
Um, well, it is so much easier to connect with people when you are being you, right? Like ever since I've been a coach, like I've been in this mindset of being me. So you have that little fear when you're going into it, but then you start into a conversation and it's easy for people to open up to me. Right. And even people that I don't work with, like I have people that I can bring into a conversation and then they're like, what just happened? Right.
Yeah.
But I find when you talk, and I'm the same way though, if I talk to somebody and I feel they are genuine and they are who they are, I have zero problems opening up to them. And there's not going to be any discomfort around it either. Right. Like when we were a group of Enlifted, like we were straight into the deep shit. Right. When you were talking to people, there was no like dancing around what we were trying to say. You could jump right into a conversation because we're all being us. And I find as a coach, it is easier to connect and have meaningful conversations on both ends when you're being you, not holding any part back. Because when you're holding part of yourself back, you're constantly trying to keep that mask on, right? Mm-hmm. So that it doesn't slip. So you're not fully invested in any conversation that you're having when you're holding up masks and curtains and trying to hide part of who you are, right?
Yeah. Doing the old look over here, not over here.
Yeah. And you can tell there's a lot of like stopped and it's, not meeting a whole lot of the eye contact. And I'm big on that. Like I love making eye contact with people, especially when I'm walking my dog. And I'm actually surprised because I live right near a high school. I'm surprised at the amount of high school students who will actually make eye contact with me and smile.
Yeah. I that's something that I've remarked as well. Like, say what you want about the institutions of education in Western society. Whatever's been coming through in the latest generation, there's a lot more than what came through for us millennials. I'm making an assumption that we're about the same age.
We're
close. Yeah, it's wild, and it's also and I'm assuming also that there's many people in the neighborhood that very quickly shy away from that and get really uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, there's some. Well, and there's some that I always look up. Because I rarely have I have my electronic with me, but I rarely bring it out for anything. Mm-hmm. But even if I'm say talking to my mom on the phone while I'm walking, I will still stop. Like I'm still making eye contact with people as I walk by them. And lots of people in my neighborhood do smile and look back at me. There are a fair few though that try their best to like look down, right? Or they'll look, but they don't do anything.
Sure.
So, which I find interesting. Mm-hmm. Like it's an interesting thing.
Speaking on this topic of neighbors and interactions, this is something that's popped up on a few episodes out of conversations of people who've lived in various places in the world, or like how many people in various parts of the Americas or even European societies of how do we interact with our neighbors. And I know myself, like many times, I've lived in places where I don't know anybody I live next to versus other parts of the world where it's a necessity for you to know who lives right next door to you, whether because you are collaborating, like relying on each other to help out or relying on each other to stay safe or whatever it is. And something that I've been curious about is many times when we see that much more close-knit community, those are often viewed as less safe for people versus what we have where you may not know anybody you live next to. And then I question which one's actually less safe.
Yeah.
The one where you don't know who lives next door, what they like, what they may be doing.
Well, and that's I believe a lot of people have the thought process. Is that the right word that I'm looking for? They feel safe in their ignorance.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of the interactions that you can have. So, I mean, I've lived so many different places. Like I've lived in Germany. I've lived here before. I've lived in New York. I've lived in a different province from where I am. And now I'm back to this place that I'm at again. And every place that I've lived has been different. But my husband and I, that's one thing that we're both very good at is we want to connect with people. So we've connected more with neighbors than our neighbors have connected with each other. So like my neighbor over here, she comes and does my fitness class. And her husband is like Wilson from Home Improvement. You know, he looks over the fence. Except I know what he looks like, but he like throws vegetables over the fence at us. Neighbor over here. She's the crackpot old lady who like everybody thinks is grumpy and crazy. Well, you stop and have a conversation with her and her husband hung himself in their garage. Her first husband died of cancer. Her dad beat her when she was young. Like I'd be pretty fucking cranky too. But she's like 80 years old and she's going to therapy and she wants to not be so angry anymore.
Okay.
Right. So it's like, I know like there's a couple that I've never met. But like Germany, there was a language barrier, but always a wave. Right. New York, we knew some of our neighbors, but I found like that was a different one. Like we were very friendly with our neighbors on one side and we'd do waves, but not very many people interacted. I found where we lived in New York. Here, there is an age part of it too. Right. I think a lot of it is operated off of assumptions. Well, they're young, so they must be like crazy, going to throw parties, or they're smoking the marijuana, and it's
doing all kinds of evil or bad or whatever.
Yeah. Right. So it's where it's like I can connect with 60-year-old over here and 80-year-old over here, and like people who are the exact same age as me in their 30s over here. Like we can all connect with each other. Right. It's that openness and safety wise, like back to that question, I can't say I felt any safer knowing than not knowing. Okay. But for myself, saying that I feel safe because I don't know what's going on, right? Or I don't know who these people are, like in that ignorance is like one of those veils, right? So for me, I would rather try, right? And have, like, there's a man that lives on the corner over here. I have never spoken to him. And we wave to each other every time I go by. Yeah. Always wave, always smile.
You have at least a reaction or an interaction with each other. At least there's that. But there's sometimes I've made the observation of sometimes going like, never seen that person before. Like they're walking by my house and they're petting my dog. I've never seen them before. Oh, they live across the street. Whoa. And then you talk to him and you go, oh, how did you just move in? I've been here for 12 years. Okay. I'm just going to go walk the other way here. But
Yeah.
one thing that comes up in that of like this, that veil of ignorance, in viewing that as like, for some people or for many people, like making that interaction or showing up as themselves, even though there are people that live less than 100 feet away from you, depending on how big your neighborhood is, I suppose, that there could be a fear of rejection. Like, what if these people don't like me? So rather than not know me than to not like me, or whatever that looks like, or well, I just want to mind my own business. And we create these little shiny rooms in hell for ourselves of, well, man, it'd be really nice if there was a bigger community around me, or be cool if they had this, that, or the other, block parties or whatever connection that you crave, that you may look outside of the small, very local community that's just outside your doorstep.
Yeah. Well, and as like a military family, since I met my husband and moved in with him, I've never lived near family. Like the closest we lived to my family was New York. And it was still like 13 and a half hours of straight driving away.
Got it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you have the choice, right? Like, and I see it a lot with people. You can choose to be absolutely miserable and be unsupported, or you can go create and find your support group. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. I see, like, I think it made me think of like high school and like middle school and young kids who are going through their weirdness, right? This is only one part of your life. It's like, just because this asshole is coming at you about your weirdness doesn't mean your group of weirdness isn't over here. Like, go find your weird people, right? Like, there is at least, which is at minimal, one person out there that's going to match with you, right? You're going to find your people. What are you passionate about? What are you fired up about? What do you love? Go and find that thing, and you're going to find other people who you have something in common with. Yeah. Right. But if you choose to turn inward and just be like, nobody likes me, it's like, well, that you found yet. Right. It's like, I now have people that could support me. Like, if something was to happen with my children, or I need a ride somewhere, and like, I have people that I can ask for that now. Right. And it's because I created it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It can be very easy to sit in that, oh, woe is me space. And as a recovered swoopy hair emo kid, like I know that one for the best. Hair. Oh, I got pictures. If you doubt the swoopiness of the hair, covering one eye, all asymmetrical, long in the front. There's many.
I can picture it though. I can picture it.
Yeah. We get stuck in that mentality of like, nobody's ever felt this way before, as you're listening to music that is talking about feeling the way that you feel. Like, it's hilarious.
Well, and that ties back into why is it so easy to do, like, create bad habits than good habits? It's the same thing with your mindset. It is so much easier for us to believe the negative than it is to believe the positive. Right. And I always have a visual when I think of it, when I'm explaining it to clients about like negativity and positivity and the power of changing your language. Since I've been a child, this would be the most positive I've ever been in my life. And I'm going to draw the line at like 8 is when it changed, because when I was 8 years old, I was hit by a car and I should have died. And then there was PTSD and anxiety. And then it was just a shit show after that. So I'm going to say, since I was 8 years old, this is the most positive I've ever been. And the language, it's like, you're swimming, you're trying to get above water, right? When you're stuck way down deep in the negativity, right? And then let's say you break the surface, you're just kind of in that limbo. It is so easy to be dragged back down as it is to pop up onto the surface into a raft. But the cool thing is that once you're up there, it does become easier to stay in that raft and above the water and in the positivity and the sunshine and the light, right? But it's work to get there, right? Like, have you ever tried to climb into a canoe in the water?
I haven't
It's
actually.
fucking hard.
I mean, I can imagine that it is.
Right. But once you're in there, you're good.
Yeah.
Like
once you make it over the edge.
Yeah. And don't tip it over on yourself. Fall back underneath. Right.
That sounds like something I would do.
Yeah. It's like, it's hard to get into that positivity and the light, but it's like once you're there, right? But it is so easy and you can feed it. It's easy to feed it. And it's, again, why is it so easy? And like, I believe it's because of society and the norms that have been put on us, that it's that there's so much negativity in the way that we speak. Like, I was listening to a coach talk the other day, and he is a phenomenal coach, and he coaches young athletes, and he calls himself a mindset coach. And but I'm listening to him talk, and it's riddled with negations, and it's riddled with soft talk. And it's the amount of power that he would have if those simple things changed. Right. It's like, again, right. It's that
after the presentation, you just slide in the car and say, come play.
Yeah. Right. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, you would be so much better. And but that's the thing, is that we are taught to talk in negations. We are taught to talk in soft talk, right? We are taught binary, right? Like, that is the world that we grow up in. So yes, of course, it's easier to be pulled down and believe the negative when that is what we've lived within, and not from, like, that is outside of the shit show that is the world that is falling apart around us. It's that simply the way that we talk and we live.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had this conversation with a client this morning too, because she's like, I haven't checked the news or anything. It's like, is the world just falling apart? I was like, depends on who you ask.
Right. And
like, you can believe any narrative about it that you would like. Yeah. Is there conflict in the world? Absolutely. Are things less than optimal? Can things be better? They can always be better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can choose that if it's the worst the world's ever been, or if I can choose that, this is a path. Yeah, there are terrible things that happen in the world, and I'm going to do what I can to make things better.
Yeah. Right.
And looking at simple shifts like that, because there is something to be said about feeling. It feels good to feel bad, and when we look at our popular media sources of our TV and music and movies and news, like we've created the culture around thriving, around the stories of suffering, the stories of or the music about how terrible things hurt, and how it can just take a slice out of any top 40 bracket, and you'd likely find something more things that are about feeling bad than it is about feeling great.
Well, and then it cuts that, like it gives that okayness for us to just survive.
Yes.
Right. If you're surviving, you are above par. Right. Like, for me, it is not, negation acknowledged, hard to thrive. Mm-hmm. It takes work. I said it the other day. I was like, easy is quick and rarely does it last. Mm-hmm. Simple takes work and lasts likely for the rest of your lifetime, which is how I operate. Everything that I operate on, like and lifted, story work, language, it's all simple. You have to put the work in for it to take effect and for it to last, right? Quick fixes like diets and your like motivational posters, right? It's like you're just holding yourself together with tape. Mm-hmm. Not even the good duct tape, just tape.
The cheapest of Scotch tapes.
Yeah.
Like Scotch brand from a dollar store or something.
The dollar store. Yeah. right? And you're like, this will hold for a little while.
I used to say bubblegum and shoestring.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we look at that as far as like what we can, we come back to this idea of simple. Like, how often do people equate simple and easy as the same thing?
All the time. Right.
Was
And
that
it's,
something? So in your practice and in getting into supporting others as a coach, is that something that you had to discover for yourself, or was that something that you were just like you got from day one?
it was, everything is a process. So
Mhm.
what I tell people is everything that I teach you, I have been through, and I went through hell doing it because I was figuring it out on my own. Because for the most part, I struggled with massive disordered eating, and I struggled with my mental health, and I struggled with all of this. And it was, for me, it was, I want to find a better, simpler way
Mhm.
for people to do this and not feel like they're losing their minds.
Yeah.
Right? Like losing weight and the key to all of it is the mental health and the mindset part of it. Right? So, and it was something that I wrote out. I was writing a post and that's where that came from. It was easy is quick.
Mhm.
Right? It was this thought that came to me, and I honestly have no idea why. And it was easy is quick. And it's that I'm going to do keto. I'm going to do this 30-day boot camp because they told me that I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 30 days.
Mhm.
Like it's that quick fix. You're looking for an external validation
Mhm.
to tell you that you're doing a good job because you are unable to tell yourself that you're doing a good job. You have to see it physically.
Mhm.
And it's typically from a number on the scale.
Which,
right?
Is I could speak volumes as an Olympic weightlifter, somebody in a weight class sport. I can speak volumes on the manipulation of body weight and
absolutely
not meaning jack shit about your body composition of what actually matters for longevity, performance, feeling good about yourself, all of those things.
Yeah. I tell people I do that 30,000 foot view. So one of my favorite things to tell people that gives them I've never thought of it that way because we're so and it's good to dial in on certain things. And then when it comes to weight loss or when you're trying to change your physical health, we tend to look at that day to day, week to week. Like I know people who have weighed themselves every single day. And I was like, what is the purpose of this? I have done it only once because I did it leading up to my period because I wanted to show people what it meant. I weighed myself every day leading up to my period and it was down, 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 up 7 pounds overnight.
Yep.
Right? It's to show this is normal and it's fine. Mm-hmm. You're not physically capable of gaining 7 pounds of fat. You're not even physically capable of gaining 1 pound of fat in a day.
Yes. Much less even a week, really.
Yes. But that's, it's your gravitational pull to the earth at this time.
Yes. Yes.
Nothing more. Mm-hmm. It also has nothing to do with anything else.
There's so many other factors with it too, of like hydration, salt. There's so much that we think it is. We think of it as muscle and fat only. We forget all the other things that are associated with all of that. And I will say this as somebody who has gone stretches of weighing themselves every day, that there can be applications of that depending on how you're using it. So if we're talking performance.
What is the purpose of it? Is the scale that narcissistic relationship that's telling you whether you're doing a good job or not? Or are you like, I'm going to make weight or I can't compete, right? What is it that what's the purpose? Are you using it as a tool or are you using it as a punishment?
Correct. Yes. And I've used it as to be able to say, if I am in a cutting phase, it gives me an average for the week, not because I know that it can fluctuate on any given day, plus or minus whatever percentage. It's like, okay, can I look at this week and say, all right, I've lost a close to what I would expect to in this amount of time? No. Okay. What was different? What do I need to change? They're data points. That's all that they are.
Right. And then you take those data points and you've got that day to day, but then you go and you bring it out and you look at it over a period of time and you're like, this right here. Right. Yes. I tell people, you beat yourself up over one meal going out. You will not eat all day long because you know you're going out with your friends and you want to have some drinks and you want to have the food. And you know that if you eat, you're going to go over your calories and you're going to beat yourself up over it and all of that. Okay, let's go out. There are 1,094 meals in a year.
Say that number again.
Even if 1,094. Maybe it's 5. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Depends on a leap year or not.
Yeah, right. And you're beating yourself up over one. Even if you ate out every single week of a year, that's 52 meals out of 1,095.
What's that percentage? I'm curious.
That's less than 1%, I believe. Maybe it's 3. I did the math one time and I was like, this is stupid. Like, why?
4.7%.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was the one meal, right? Like what? Yeah. It's a pebble on your path. But again, we love to beat ourselves up about something. We're the victim. It's easier to believe the bad stuff. And, everything else is the reason why we can't do something except for us. But the cool part is when you're like, oh, most of this is my fault. It's not your fault. It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. And the cool thing about being like, oh, I'm in charge of all of this, not the food, not the gym, not society, not my parents. I'm in charge of this. All of a sudden you can make some changes. And now you're empowered. Right. And it's fun to be empowered.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Or being able to take a look at, like, I also somebody who has struggled with emotional eating patterns. Like that was food and alcohol were my drug of choice, really. When we talk about I want to talk about it in terms of addiction, and being able to take a look at that too of, okay, I'm making these choices, even though I know of like, okay, am I looking at this? What good is there? I'm stumbling all over my words. What good is there in beating myself up over the choice that I made for my, whatever last choice that was less than optimal? It's like, okay, can I beat myself up about it? Yeah. What's that going to do? I'm not giving up, and I'm keeping that in mind when I make nutritional choices that are less than optimal. That, like, checking in. Am I choosing this because I'm running away from something that I'm feeling? Am I choosing this because I just want it? Am I choosing this because of autopilot, because that's what I've always done? Being able to get curious and aware of what your choices look like outside of the nuanced control that we try to exert over our choices, especially when we talk about changing health and body weight.
Yeah. And it's interesting the way that, like, when it comes to emotional eating, the way that your reticular activating system, right, comes into play with that, and that your brain helping you, right? And your brain can only help you so far as the information that you give it. Yeah. Right. So what you tell it is important is what it's going to show you. Right. So let's say you have a hard day, you come home, you have a beer, you feel better, you move on with your evening. A couple days go by, you have a hard day, you come home, you have a beer, you feel better, you move on with your day. Next time you come home, you've had a hard day, you don't even have to think about it. You've gone autopilot. Your brain's like, we feel like shit. Beer's going to make it better. Right. And the same thing can be said for food as well. Right. Like any food, you go in, you get like a sleeve of Oreos, You eat them and then you feel better. Ice cream, like whatever, like pick your poison. Right. And I tell people when it comes to those emotional habits, before we border it on disorder, but the emotional habits, it's the food is not the problem. The alcohol is not the problem. It's you are using that. That's just your vehicle to get you towards your, like the pleasure, right? Like that's your vehicle of choice, right? When you are emotionally eating, you are numbing yourself. Right. And the same thing now can be said because it's alcohol and food, but social media is also that other one. We're just doom scrolling, right? Getting lost in it, right? One more. Oh, I got to shut this off. Just one more, right? And before you know it, like I set a timer on my social media and how quick 45 minutes can go by if you're scrolling, right? And staying lost in it. And I've not fallen back into them, but I had. So I lost my dad very suddenly back in April. And like I had a summer of where I had created a pretty good relationship again with my social media. That's what I was doing to get through. And there were times where I would turn to food for comfort and knowing full well what I was doing. It's like, are you eating this because you want it? Yeah, I do want it. But mostly I'm eating it because I know it's going to make me feel a little bit better right now. And I'm not currently in a place where I can make myself feel better. So I'm going to take what I got.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a conversation, so be the previous episode to this one, with Ryan Sprague of like many times something I've noticed for myself in that journey as well is, in those times in my emotional eating at the height of what that looked like, which was, let's go out for happy hour. Let's get drinks and food and stay out till bar close at 2 a.m. I'm going to get home and I'm going to order a pizza and I'm going to eat until I fall asleep. Wake up, start eating again until I fall asleep again. And like what I found over time was there was also a major component of a lack of connection to myself.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking for connection in other places. I was looking for connection in these social events, and that wasn't fulfilling enough. So then I had this need, or I had this uncomfortable feeling that then was being numbed by food, more food. And to exactly what you were talking about with social media is that we're looking for, if we lack the connection to self, or if we lack the connection to how we actually feel, it can be a way to push that off even further. I don't know if you have any other notes on this idea of connection in these journeys.
Connection is like huge when it comes to like, I like the way that you said that. It was the connection to yourself. And whenever I think of that, I think of, there was a little cartoon that I saw one time, and it was like just a little comic strip. And it was like a little bear saying to like a little other animal. And it was like, where did you find that? I've been looking everywhere for it. And he's got like happiness in his hands. And he's like, I made it myself.
Yeah.
Right. And it's there. I find so many of us are looking for happiness and connection outside of ourselves, and without realizing how much more powerful the external connection will be when you have a good internal connection to yourself. Right. And for a lot of people, it goes back to that comfort zone, right? It's, in my experience, so many people put off working on themselves because they know the shit show that is this, right? That is themselves, and that they're afraid and terrified of going into that, right? So I'm just going to keep staying on the outside, outside.
It's like a room that's been that you've been ignoring cleaning for your entire lifetime.
And you like peek in every once in a while. You're like, no, not today.
Oh, that's uncomfortable. Let's put that in that room. Let's forget about it. Shove it in that room where nobody goes.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to clean the room up a little bit.
Yeah. And where do you start? I don't know where to start. And then you just make a big mess trying to start cleaning up.
If there ever there was a metaphor for personal development, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's a messy room that and then you're going to make another mess in it and you're going to clean it up again. It's an ongoing process. Always.
Yeah. Yes. And there's two ways that you can view that too. It's like when it comes to your mental health, your physical health, it's something that you're going to have to work at for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And you can choose to see that as exhausting, or you can choose to have that as a goal to work towards, a path to go down. It's a worthy, noble cause to make sure that you can live as long as you possibly can and for it to be a happy life. Right. It's
something you get to do.
Yeah. Like you say that it's like, this is something you're going to have to work on for the rest of your life. And it's like, ugh, like that's so long. And it's like, well, it could be, or it can be really short depending on whether you work on it or not. Like it's this, your improvement. And I forget what I was reading, but it was like so many people that are older that they die. And most people, when you talk to them and they're like in their 80s and 90s and they're at that age, they welcome death, right? They want it to happen. And again, I forget where I read it, but it was like so many people have nothing left to truly work towards. They've stopped giving themselves goals. Right? So then what is there to live for? Right? We need a path to walk down. We need goals to strive and work towards. And I think it's awesome that we can constantly work on becoming a better version of ourselves, like every single day. Right. Yeah. You wouldn't, somebody like for you, an Olympic weightlifter, like you wouldn't go and get to this peak physical form and be like, there it is, I'm good. And then not work on it forever. You're just like, I'm here, I'm where I wanted to be. And then think you're going to stay there. You're not. You got to continue to put the reps in. It's going to be a lot easier once you get there. It's still going to require work, and life is going to smack you down. You're going to have things happen like lose a loved one, or you hurt yourself, or you have a child, and life changes and shifts. It's like, how does the goal change and shift? Right.
Exactly. There's this notion that I've been very much in the humor of life, the cosmic giggle, the inherent absurdity that it is to be a human alive, period. And one of the things I think is the funniest is this notion of being done or being completed, like as a person. Just like what you were talking about, the people who have given up, or they're ready to pass. They're ready to be at the end of their life. Like they're done. That's what done looks like, folks. If we're, I had to ask myself this question of, why am I in such a hurry to be done?
Yeah.
Why? Because that seems really morbid. Like, I can't wait to be 80 and have everything done in my life. It's like, I understand, like, I'm impatient for the results that I want to see. I understand that. And also there's a disconnect of, well, once I achieve this, I'll never have to suffer through something or struggle through something ever again. It's like, that's a funny thought. That's a real funny thought. Knowing that the day
I'm sorry. And I have that picture, and I think of so many people that I'm like, I know people that do that, right? Like, if
only I lose these 10 pounds, my life will finally have meaning. Meanwhile, your children are off to the side going, what about us? Like nothing, right? Nothing. Or like, I saw a really great quote on this the other day of, one day your ceiling is going to be the floor. What is once your ceiling is someday going to be the floor. What one day you think is your best day ever is going to be your own personal hell. And that's the trajectory of life. Because we're as humans, we're very adaptable. We can adapt to almost anything that we put in front of ourselves. We can get used to any situation that we can actually physically survive. And so when your best day ever becomes your everyday, all of a sudden it becomes mundane and it becomes a lot less exciting. And then it becomes your own personal hell. And so this idea of, if I can only just achieve this one thing, I'll be whatever I believe that to be, becomes over time the most funny thing that you can think.
Well, and it's rarely ever what you thought it was going to be, right? Especially when you tie it to such an external factor. Like, if I could just lose 10 pounds, I'd feel better about myself. Guarantee you will not. Like, guaranteed.
I've lived that one.
Like, I remember chasing a weight.
Yeah.
And I never reached the weight. But I remember I had avoided mirrors for a really, really long time. I hadn't even realized that I had avoided like a full length mirror, not like look at my face, but a full length mirror. And I forget what I was doing, but I was going out and I caught my reflection in the mirror, and I actually stopped and went back and looked at myself. And I was like, is that what I look like?
When did this happen?
I was like, you look really good. What are you doing? Right. So it's like, sometimes you'll get there and it's not what you expected. And it's usually when you put in the actual work that needs working on, that you're going to, it can either be a burden or it could be a journey. Like, you get to pick, right? It's a fun journey to constantly have something to work towards. Like, I can only imagine how bored I would be without something to work towards. Yeah. Right.
It takes all the adventure out of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I just picture someone being like, hustle, hustle, hustle. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. And then you're just sitting there and you're like, well, I achieved all the things on my checklist and now I'm waiting to be happy.
It's like it was an old cartoon that I saw at one point of somebody who's like, I scrolled to the end of the internet. I saw everything there was to be seen. Now what? Oh.
Yeah. A refresh.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of new stuff at the top.
There's more now. Yep, exactly. Well, awesome. As we wrap up, to keep an eye on time and be respectful for our schedules, is there anything in particular that you would like to leave the listeners with? A message or a bit of wisdom? Anything that you'd like to share with them as a final thought?
One of my favorite things that a coach said to me is, no great thing has ever happened by staying in your comfort zone.
Love it.
And I tell it to my kids all the time. It's, if you want more, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. If you want change, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And I can promise it is not as uncomfortable as you think it is.
That's perfect. Perfect connection into the start of our conversation. This has been amazing. Anything that you'd like to promote? Anything that you'd like to have the listeners be aware of? How they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Everything that I do for the most part is on my website. It's bnalifestyle.com. I have an Eradicate Emotional Eating course coming up. It's 6-week deep dive into the emotional shit we got going on inside our head, which is the real reason why we're staying stuck. We're going to unpack it, unload it, and move on from it for real. So I've got that coming up in November. So anybody who's interested in that, you can find the information on the website. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justine, for hanging out with me today. This was a blast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Love having this conversation and keeping things going. I appreciate you being here and appreciate you being you and you being weird, just like me.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, I've got one thing to tell you. Keep staying strong. And most importantly, stay weird, folks.